Well, good morning. We're running late today, and I'm not doing any introductions or anything. I'm already in the studio. Jean Marie's here with me. We've had some terrible issues with computers, with audio, and we were having it right up until we just decided to go for it. I told Jean while we were doing the intro that she could pray, and we'll invite you to pray with us. We have no idea what's going on, but every time we try to hook this thing up, I don't know. I think the enemy just does not want this interview to happen, and so we're gonna go ahead. Jean, are you ready?
Yes, Pastor, I am
Okay.
ready.
All right. This is Jean Marie Davis. She is the executive director of Branches Pregnancy Resource Center in Brattleboro, Vermont, and has found herself when she moved to New Hampshire and the Brattleboro Keene area. She had no idea the storm that she was going to end up in the middle of, but she has found herself, and Branches along with her have found herself at the epicenter of the pro-life movement, and so many things are happening. And I just wanted to spend a few minutes with Jean. So I'm going to ask you. I see some folks in here, and you're going to pray with us. There's Kimberly Elmore and my son Andrew, and Robin's there. Robin says, "You got it. Been praying," and so we'll see people join in. We're kind of off schedule, so we may miss some folks, but they'll pick it up on the replay later on. Jean Marie Davis, how in the world did you end up in Vermont at Branches Pregnancy Center?
Uh, oh, simple. Phyllis Phelps. She's the one that handed me the application. Um,
Yeah.
I was at the my end of myself. I was arguing with the Lord, and I was wrestling with Him, and I was working about 60 hours a week at a hospital, and so sisters at my church were helping me out because I'm a single mom. So they were helping me with my son, and I was spending about 12 hours away. And I just wrestled with the Lord, and I said, I know you called me to ministry, and I need to get out of this place. So I need to just deal with whatever you got. And if you can't put me in a ministry, Lord, I said, then I'm done asking, and I'll just keep doing this, but I will never ask you again to go into a full-time ministry.
Hmm.
And then Phil sent me a sermon, and then the next day I saw Phyllis, and she said, here's the application, fill it out. And I said, I'm not qualified. And she goes, fill it out. What do they want to do? Say no? So
Yeah.
that's how I ended up at Branches.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to remind you to go real slow. We're
Oh,
still
yes.
clipping a little bit there, but we're gonna see this thing through. So you are not from New England originally. Where are you from?
I'm from the West Coast.
The West Coast, California?
Yes.
Yeah. What part of California? I don't tell me anything you don't want to be known, but I think
I'm,
folks want to know how in the world you ended up here and what kind of background you come from.
yes. So I am originally from the Bay Area.
Okay,
And
San Francisco Bay Area.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yep.
And so I was out there, lived out there. I was raised majority of my life out there, but then I was traveled around. And then at the age of 18, that's when I decided to walk into human trafficking. And then that's when I was just all over the place. I was
Yeah.
talking to my son the other day, and I was like, only 14 states I never lived in, out of the 50 states. So,
Yeah. So there was a little clipping there. I want to make sure everybody hears it. You spent a number of years being trafficked
yes,
in sex trafficking,
yes,
but it started really early, didn't it?
yes. So,
Even before you were out on the streets, there was
yeah,
stuff going on. Yeah.
yes. So when I was a child, my family was not around, and if they were around, we had a lot of sex parties, and we had a lot of football parties and a lot of basketball parties, and a lot of drugs were being passed around. I remember at the age of
Yeah.
6, I was in the bars. Age of 4 is when my dad gave me my first beer. Age of 6 is when my grandfather gave me my first cigarette. And by the age of 12, I was on LSD, acid, and shrooms.
By the time you were 12 years old.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was, if I remember your story correctly, Gene, there was a lot of sexual abuse even when you were a very young child.
Yes.
Was that
Uh,
through family?
Family, friends, people who call themselves uncles, call themselves
Uh-huh.
aunts. Um, there was times where I lived across the street from uh, some kids, and their mother would get beat up by their father, so they would run to my house, or I would deal with being abused, so I'd run to their house. So we would run back and forth to each other's houses, trying to hide and be safe.
Wow. Wow. And so out on the streets, being trafficked, being pimped, and then things kind of went sour. You got pregnant at some point?
Yes, so I ended up pregnant. It was probably about when I was 29, 28, 29 is when 29 is when I had my son. So I was 28 when I found out I was pregnant. But I was in a hotel room in the Bay Area, and I was doing a lot of crystal meth, and I was trying to commit suicide actually. And I kept on looking at my stomach, and I was losing weight, but my stomach was still growing, and I was getting frustrated because drugs, you're supposed to lose weight with drugs.
Right.
And so when they told me that I was pregnant, I didn't actually believe the hospital when they told me, because I had been told that I couldn't get pregnant. And that's why a lot of my trafficking, I was done unprotectedly, because I was told for many years I couldn't get pregnant. And
Who told
so
you you
my
couldn't get pregnant?
the doctors, because I had a lot of surgeries,
Okay.
and I had a lot of health issues. So they told me that
Mhm.
with having cysts and different things, I wasn't able to get pregnant. So for 9 years, I had unprotected sex, so that because it made more money on the streets.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I, when I found out I was pregnant, they did a blood test, and that's when I called my pimp. And I remember he got mad at me, and he said, "Don't you tell anyone that's a lie." And I said, "I have proof." And he goes, "Well, I don't care. I need my $1,500. You told me you were going to give me $1,500 2 weeks ago, and I haven't received the money." And I said, "I'm done. I'm not going to give you that." And that's when gunshots started going off, and I had to start running, um, because they were shooting at me, and I had to dip into a building, and then that's when I called 211 to get into a safe house.
Yeah. Yeah. And then basically to protect your life, they sent you east.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
kind of.
kind of. Okay.
Kind of. The police told me that I had an option, 4 states to pick from, which was Alaska, Washington, Maine, and New Hampshire. But 27 shelters had denied me. So there's at that time there were 16 shelters in Maine, and they had all denied me. The shelters in Washington were full and denied me, and I wasn't going to Alaska. That was out of the
Right.
question.
Why did they deny you these shelters? They just didn't want you. They didn't have room for you. What?
Some of them didn't have room for me. Others said that my situation was too severe and that I would put other women in danger. So they didn't want me
Yeah.
to come there. So it was
Yeah. They felt you were going to be a danger to the other people in the, yeah,
in a place.
because of those people who wanted to harm you.
Yep.
Wow.
So when I was on my 17th call. It was 9 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, 6 o'clock on the West Coast, and this woman named Teresa answered the phone. I never forget. She doesn't work there anymore, but she answered the phone, and it was the domestic violence shelter in Keene, and I didn't realize it was just a number I called, and she said, "Okay, we'll take you. You got to get out of here." And I had only $1.38. I had called everybody who I helped get money for and got whatever money they needed, and nobody wanted to help me. They all said, "Oh, Gene, you got money. You stay with money. We don't need to. You don't need to ask us for money." So the center said, "Okay, we'll pay a ticket for you on the bus." And Teresa told them, "If you put her on the bus, she'll be dead before she gets here."
Hmm.
So they put me on a plane, a one-way plane ticket, and August 19, 2014 is when I touched down in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Manchester, New Hampshire.
Yep.
And the name of the place where you went, the center that you first went to was?
The domestic violence center was the uh, Monadnock Prevent Violent Prevention
Okay. Yeah.
Domestic Violence Shelter
Right. Right.
in Keene. So that's when they told me about Phyllis, or they told me about the pregnancy center, which was very interesting because when I went to the pregnancy center, uh, I didn't know it was the pregnancy center. It was a building, and I kept pulling on the door. Every time I went to that door, the door was always locked. Every time, and I would shake it and I would bang on the door, but nobody would come. And so I went back, and this guy from the AA meeting had said, "Hey, you want to hit some heroin? We're about to do some heroin." And I was like, "No, I was never a fan of heroin. That
Mm-hmm.
was not my drug of choice." So I said, "No, I'm good." But then I was like, I didn't come all the way to the East Coast to do drugs. If I wanted to do drugs, I might as well stay in California.
Yeah.
So I went, and Teresa asked me to pick some clothes, and she asked me if I had any clothes for my child, and I said no. And in my mind, I was either going to do one or two things: either leave my child at the hospital and just walk away after I had my child, or I was going to have an abortion. And so that's when she told me about the pregnancy center, and that's when she called Phyllis. And Phyllis answered the phone, and she said, "Okay, she could come." So I walked, and it was the same door that I had been jerking on. Was the same door that I was sent back to.
Yeah. And that Phyllis was Phyllis Phelps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you two are buddies yet, even, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So tell us about Phyllis. Tell us about when you met Phyllis.
Phyllis, I'll probably cry past it.
That's okay. You can cry. Yeah.
It's
It's okay.
it's like I don't know. So um, Phyllis was the first person in many years to say, "How can I help you?" Um, I had been because I had been raped for so long and just used. There was no caring about how I was doing, and so she tried to explain who Jesus was to me, because I don't want my child, and I explained to her why. 'Cause she asked me why did I not want my child, and I explained to her because I didn't want my child to go through the same stuff I went through,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so that's why I didn't want my child. So what she did was she said, do the ultrasound, and so we did an ultrasound, and, and when she came back, I heard the heartbeat, and I said, "Okay, I'll keep my child. Now what?" And that's when she said, "Well, I can't help you, but I know a man named Jesus." And I think because of the way that she presented Jesus to me was when I was like, "Okay, I'll give this man a try." Like there was just something, and I remember I looked at Phyllis and I said, "I want what you have. There's something in your eyes that I want."
Yeah.
And so that moment in her office, I'll never forget when we did the salvation message. There was a warm. It was like a. It's like a warm oil was like falling over me, and I I remember at that moment I had no desire to smoke cigarettes. I had no desire to do crystal meth anymore. Like I was almost like I was washed, and I
Yeah.
just broke down and cried in her office. And that's when she said, "Okay, you've accepted Jesus." And I said, "All right, now what?" I said, "I'm homeless
Now what?
and I'm pregnant, and how are you going to help me?" And so that's where she felt like she got challenged because I asked her that question, and so she opened up a home. She didn't have a home at the time for House of Hope, New Hampshire, so she brought me to a program that she had went through, and I had stayed there for 27 months, and because I was a little hard headed,
Hmm.
and I had a little rough,
Really?
and I had a little rough edges, and
Yeah.
wanted to do it my
Never
way.
knew that. Never knew that about you.
So I learned how to. I learned who Jesus was. I read. It was funny because I had at the time I had a Jehovah's Witness Bible, and I took the Jehovah's Witness Bible and I had the New King James Version, and I literally went word for word, and I read the Bible cover to cover in 8 months to figure out who this man Jesus was. And
Yeah.
when I finished reading the New King James Version, I handed the um, the Jehovah's Witness Bible and said, "I'm done. I want this man named Jesus, and
Yeah.
everything. I want everything about him in my life."
Yeah.
So,
So from there, Phyllis opened House of Hope, and basically Phyllis, who has a house full of women now that she's helping, and there have been many who have graduated from House of Hope. I did an interview with Phyllis a couple of months ago, uh, but you were in that. You basically were the reason that she got off the dime and started House of Hope because you needed a place to stay.
yes, yep,
Wow, that's pretty amazing, you know. Uh, yeah, again, it looks like you were a catalyst for a ministry. And so then at some point there you went off to Bible college.
yes. The Lord called me to Bible college was crazy because once again I didn't think I was equipped, and so I went to North Point Bible College. I graduated with an associate's degree in biblical theology, and I really do believe that that was like the foundation of. I'm a type of person where I don't want to say because of a pastor is the reason why I don't believe in something. I want to be like, no, this is the reason I agree with this pastor because, and I myself can point it out scripturally why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I, I feel that in this time in this the world that we live in, at the end of the day, if you can't point it out and have your own stance on why you're doing something, then
Yeah.
people are not going to believe what you say. But if you could scripturally show people, this is the reason why, not just because my pastor believes it, but because I believe it, and this is why, it gives more definite for people to see that they're real.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you do 4 years at North Point?
No, I
Okay.
did three.
Did three. Well, you may or may not know this. North Point was originally Zion Bible Institute,
Yes.
and they were originally in East Providence, Rhode Island, and that's where I started school.
Oh,
When I
okay.
graduated from high school, I went to Zion Bible Institute in East Providence back in 1967.
Wow.
I
Okay.
probably just dated myself a little bit, but I graduated in 1967. I went to Zion Bible Institute, which moved from Providence to Great Barrington, and then from
Mhm.
Great Barrington moved up to where they are now. At that time, they were only a 3 year school,
Yes.
but I think they've added a fourth year now. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
They have 4 years,
Okay. Good.
and then they also have a master's.
Yeah. Good school. Good school.
Yes.
You got into a good place. Got,
Yes.
as a matter of fact, I've got a couple of fellows that I've kind of launched into ministry who are graduates of North Point or Zion, depending on when they graduated.
Yes.
So we have some common roots there. So you came out of school and you went to work in a hospital. Was that?
No, I went to work at House of Hope. So
Oh,
I
you
was,
went to work at House of Hope after you got out
yes.
of Bible school.
Yep.
Okay.
So I was
Yep.
with Phyllis when she opened the doors at House of Hope, and I
Uh-huh.
worked with her. And then she looked at me and said, "Gene, you need to fly." And I said,
She cut you
"Okay,
loose, did she? Yeah.
yeah." So I
Yeah.
said, "Okay." So that's when I went and I started working at the hospitals and working in the HR department. Um,
Okay.
and then from there,
Was that in Cheshire County?
I I worked at the Monadnock Community Hospital in Peterborough, and then I
Oh,
moved
in Peterborough.
down
Okay.
to Gardner, Massachusetts, and worked at the
Uh-huh.
Haywood Hospital down there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I know where that is. Yeah. So then at some point, Branches was looking for a new director. And if I remember the sequence right, Phyllis shoved an application in your hand and said you should apply for this.
Yes.
And what happened?
I argued with the Lord. Um, I screamed and hollered. I said, I can't do this. I paced back and forth for about 48 hours. I couldn't sleep. I called my pastor, um, and he said, "What are you filling out?" And I explained to him. He goes, "Wait, what?" I said, "Pastor, just do this with me." And so I had got a reference letter. Then I had called Pastor Matt. I was like, "Pastor Matt, I need your help. I need you to pray." So I was calling
Yeah.
all these pastors because I was in over my head. I felt like I was
Yeah.
like, what am I about to walk into? And Branches wasn't even. I didn't even know. I had forgot that Branches. I'm be honest, I forgot Branches was here and that like my life was in New Hampshire. So I was like, Vermont, Brattleboro, like it was not on my radar at all.
Yeah. 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 But it's interesting because I've been affiliated with Branches for many years, going all the way back to their founding when it was called Lifeway at that point, and so I've followed. But in the last few years, the ministry at Branches has really changed pretty dramatically because at in the beginning we were focused on preventing abortions. We were focused on saving babies. Um, but a lot of that work has expanded now to other areas, hasn't it? And it seems to me like you were uniquely prepared to
Mm,
step in at this moment. I think about it a lot. We talk about it a lot. I don't think you changed Branches. I think God was changing Branches, and He put you in there during that period of transition because you were uniquely prepared for that. You're meeting women and families that at a level that we were not dealing with some years ago. And I believe God has kind of shoved this thing along. I believe, and I've said this to you, I believe God, Ephesians 2:10 says we are His workmanship created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which He's already prepared for us. So while God was preparing Branches for you, He was preparing you for Branches. And is that, can you see
yeah.
it that way? That's the
Oh,
way I see it.
yes.
That there were two things happening here, and then in God's timing, He brought the two together, you and Branches, and now everything in the last year, everything's kind of exploded, hasn't it?
Yes. Exploded.
Tell us about it. Yeah,
Exploded
tell us about it.
is not the word. I want to say it's like a grenade that just like blew
Yeah,
up. Um,
yeah,
so coming in, I thought that, okay, branches, okay, pregnancy center, okay, we're just going to focus on trying to get babies and help women and, support them. And, I went around the community and I kind of just drove around Brattleboro and kind of just got a feel of like where we were located at, like who was our target audience that we were really focused on, or who we were going to be dealing with. And
Yeah.
then I got a phone call this time last year, and somebody had asked me if I would speak and testify in front of the senators of Vermont. And I was like, wait, what? No,
And that was regarding trafficking, wasn't it?
no, this was regarding shutting down the pregnancy centers.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
There's so
So,
many speaking in front of senators you've had and elsewhere in the
yes,
last year or so. It's kind of hard to keep straight. So
yes,
you were there testifying for the value of pregnancy centers.
yes. And so when I talked to the senators, I explained to them that I wasn't testifying as a director, but as a client, to kind of get them to
Mhm.
understand, like, this isn't something that I just started. Like, they, they saved my life. This is
Yeah.
this is how the pregnancy works. But because they wanted to do their own thing, they created a law, and then that's when we got involved in with ADF, and that's when everything kind of just was like, okay, this is not what I signed up for.
So, okay, now you just dropped a bit of information that everybody may not be aware of. What is ADF and why are we engaged with them?
So ADF is Alliance Defending Freedom, and July of last year, or June of last year, Alliance Defending Freedom had reached out to all of the directors in Vermont, and, had asked if one of the directors, or people who are directors, would be willing to be the plaintiffs in going against the state of Vermont in fighting to keep our centers open. And, in that meeting, I had said to them, we're not a medical site, but if you're willing to have us, I said, we'll do it.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so it was interesting because I know that you and I had a conversation way in the very beginning, and I had said, I'm going to go to battle. I'm going to fight. Something's happening, and we're going to fight. I just didn't realize it was this.
Right.
And so in July, we filed a lawsuit against the state of Vermont, and from there, that's kind of where our being on the forefront of pro-life started. Uh, People,
That's a pretty much of an understatement. We were talking earlier, and I said to you, and I've said to others that whatever has happened here, it has put you and Branches right at the epicenter of the pro-life movement all across America. People that have never heard of Brattleboro now have heard of Branches, and
yeah,
and it's because of this, and I think it's important to know that pregnancy centers are not just about preventing abortion. There's so
right.
much more to it, isn't there?
Yes, and that's what I told the senators when I testified. Saving a baby's life is 1/8 of what a pregnancy center does. I mean, we walk with them. I mean, I I've come to your ministry, your food ministry, and has asked, Robin, can you help me with getting a box of food for one of our clients? It's like
Right.
it's not just, oh, you come in the doors. No, I put out there a motto um, that says, welcome to Branches, where we do life with each other. And
We do life with each other. Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
mean that. Like, I don't feel that people nowadays understand what doing life with each other means.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, Regardless of what happens or what they're going through, you know, I know people who are, could be high. I've I've helped women, and dealt with women who have been high, and okay, how can I help you in that moment? How can I meet their need and walk with them and stuff? And that's, I think, what we're trying to display in the community.
Yeah, yeah. And we're watching Brattleboro in so many ways decline in so many ways. We're seeing things now in the town of Brattleboro that when my wife and I moved here 52 years ago, we could never have imagined. We
Yeah.
could never have imagined. I tell there are people who we talk to, and they don't believe there's trafficking going on in Brattleboro. They don't believe there's prostitution in Brattleboro. And I go, my 20-year-old grandson got propositioned right on Main Street one evening on his way home from work. I mean, right, yelling at his truck and
Mhm.
offering him sexual favors, and I think maybe we're waking up a little bit that the I've said for a long time, Brattleboro is a small town with big city problems.
Mhm.
The drug, we have gang activity in Brattleboro now, and a lot of, I suspect there's more than a few young women in Brattleboro who are where you were.
Mhm.
You think
Yes.
that's accurate?
Yes.
They are where you were.
Yep. Yep. We have alone in Brattleboro, we have six sex salons. One was already busted last year from the police, and I think they got out like 15 women who were being trafficked.
Yeah,
I picked up a girl last year on the side of the road who she was being trafficked, and her pimps had cut her brake cords. And I was just ministering to her, and she allowed me to pray with her, and she said she knew that I loved her because of the fact that I gave her food. And
yeah,
that's reality. That's the reality that we live in, and I think a lot of people don't want to experience or deal with it. So we have those, but I think I was telling somebody that I think it's really cool with branches. We become the medium bridge to where our city in Brattleboro respect us, and they look to us on a lot of certain things, and a lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
um, bills, and then for the church to have respect for branches and work together, and they we're kind of just in the middle. So I think that
yeah,
it's an honor and a privilege for that, because before it wouldn't be like that. But the state of Vermont made it seem as if we as a pregnancy center don't connect with our community. And I'm the type of person where I'm going to prove Satan wrong, um, because Satan has had my life for so many years. My whole mission is no, Satan, you're the lie, and God's the truth. So I'm going to share
yeah,
Jesus, and I'm going to show how Jesus works. And Jesus sat with the sinners. He went and he dealt with people. And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
for me, I went knocking on the city manager's door, the town manager's door, and said, "Hey, if you need help, we're here." And he's
yeah.
seen that over the year that we've been part in walking with them.
Right, right. And you've had good interaction with the police department and the school system, even.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I've kind of got an open door there. That door's been closed for a long time, and so well, Gene, I tell you what, you were the last few months have kind of been a whirlwind for you. You were one of the featured speakers at March for Life down in Washington. Got to give your testimony to hundreds of thousands of people there and to speak at several different events. You've been featured, I think you're featured on the cover of a couple of magazines right now. You've kind of stepped into the spotlight, and I don't know if that's something you ever wanted or not, but that's a heavy load to carry, isn't it? To
Yeah,
suddenly be the face of the pro-life movement, to the face of real. We laugh. I look at it this way, and I'd be interested in your input on it. I see the politicians today who have, they have branded themselves as the friend of women. They have branded themselves as we're going to be the champion for women, and they're not. They're not at all. As a matter of fact, as I look at it, women in America, at least on that progressive end of things, they've kind of been abandoned. Now we're on the side of men who are pretending to be women or women who are pretending to be men, but they're not really on the side of women. I mean, we've got girls going on public now going, listen, I'm a good athlete. I don't want to compete against men who are pretending to be a woman. I don't want a guy in my dressing room when I'm dressing or taking a shower. So that whole narrative of we're for women, women's empowerment, that's gotten eaten up in something else.
Right, right.
Yeah. It,
Well, I've told people, and I've even told senators that I've talked to, that at the end of the day, it's really a bondage, and it's what we consider in human trafficking a pivotal relationship, a dictatorship of degrading women to where they feel as if they need to depend on other people and that they are nothing, and their
yeah.
identity is in whatever the man or the government has said, and
Yeah.
so that's kind of where the world is at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you're looking toward the future. We have this court thing going on with this suit, and it's not just branches. There's another organization in the state that's Aspire up
Yep,
in Barry up in that area there.
yep. So
Your branches and Aspire are the two plaintiffs in this thing, if I understand things right.
yes.
Where, what I know you can't tell me a lot. You can't, you're bound by stuff, but are things moving? Is it stagnant? Are things happening? What's going on?
So we have filed for the third time, and we filed, I believe, last week, or it was 2 weeks ago. And right now, we are asking people to pray because we need the judge to agree to what we have filed to where we could go into discovery. And once we
Yeah.
go into discovery, then that means that we can challenge the state to show us legally, paperwork wise, not
Hmm.
um, by people's opinions or their testimonies, but actual proof that, that we are misleading in how, because one of the things that they say that we're misleading is one of the pregnancy centers in Vermont is named Women's Center. And because the
Hmm.
name is Women's Center, that means that they are saying that that's the form of we want to provide abortions because it's a women's center. So it's so
Right.
vague
Right.
that we want them to actually show proof. So we're asking people just to pray for the judge to bring into discovery.
Well, it's interesting. I've heard that for years and years and years, and I've gotten hate mail on my blog and everything that when I take a pro-life stance, and they say, well, pregnancy centers are misleading because, and the only thing that they say we're misleading about is that we women go there thinking they're going to be able to get an abortion, and that pregnancy centers lure them in but then aren't going to provide that. It's kind of funny that I look at it, and you have the pro-life and you have what's called the pro-choice, except the pro-choice people don't offer, they offer one choice,
Right.
and
Right.
branches offers many choices. Here
Yes.
there are a lot of choices, and it just so happens that abortion isn't one of them
Right.
that a pregnancy center supports. But there are a lot of other choices like keeping your baby,
Yeah.
and not just keeping the baby, but we'll help you.
Right.
I was in the center this morning, and there are clothes. We will help you with clothes, and you've already said we'll help you get food. I know for a fact that you've gotten in a car late at night and gone down to Boston to pick up someone who's come in that needs help.
Yeah.
And I also know that, and want to talk to you about that. You pick up people off the street. So, and you offer them choices. There's emotional help and there's spiritual help and there's
Yes.
real help. I mean, not those other things are not real, but I mean physical help.
Yeah.
And you offer so much more than that, and yet these these people who are so hell bent on aborting children will say that pregnancy centers are misleading,
Right.
and yet there's so many organizations that say, well, the good choice is to abort your baby.
Right. Well, and not only that, but I was in an interview and I explained to the gentleman that people go off of word of mouth and not actually do their own research. So
Yeah,
a few weeks
yeah,
ago, we had the chief of police, which was their first time, the police
hmm,
department actually coming through our center, and I gave them a tour. And one of the things that I said is, "Oh yeah, we have a post-abortion uh, support group. So if a woman does decide, that's her decision. She goes away and she has an abortion. We have a program to help them where they need psychological help to go through that.
yeah, yeah,
That is a mental thing." And the chief of police, she was shocked. She goes, "Wait a minute, that's not what's being told out there."
right.
And I go,
Well, I think the image that is given is that if a woman chooses to have an abortion, then you're done with her. You
"Right,
don't want anything else to do with her, and that's not true, is it?
no," and I think that's one of the reasons why I was asked to speak at the March for Life was because of the fact that my whole testimony uh, breaks the narrative of what the government's saying, right? So
Yeah,
Phyllis gave, helped me and showed me, my son, and then I work with her, and then 10 years later, she walks with me, hands me the application. We still have a connection. We still talk to each other. We still work with each other, and things like that. So just the fact that it started in a pregnancy center for the beginning of my walk, and to be back in, it's a full circle of showing God can really is in and through everything that we do.
amen. Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to see how you've come. I'm teaching a class on the understanding the Old Testament now on Sunday nights, and one of the things that people are just amazed at is how God, as I said earlier, God was preparing a work for branches, and He was preparing you, and the thing that we often don't see is much of the pain that we go through, much of the hurt that we go through, much of the abuse that we go through, the abandonment, and all of those things. That's part of what prepares us. There are few people. I'm sure there's a lot of them, but I'm just looking at. There are few people who could really feel the pain that young women are feeling today. They could really feel, and not just women, families.
Yes.
It's not just women who are impacted by abortion. It's whole families.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I know that Branches has their eye on the family, not just the woman, but the family.
And that includes
And
men, and that's the key part. Like, men need to be men and be fathers, and they need to know that they have support, knowing that they can be a father,
yeah,
which also
yeah.
breaks the narrative of what's going on in the world, that men are not able to be equipped to be a father.
Well, you know what? That's a long. I could start preaching here, but the reality is that the way our view of help is from our government is, men have been so emasculated,
Hmm.
and so I said for years, for years I thought the goal of the feminist movement was to make women more like men. I think it's just the opposite. I
Yeah.
think it's to emasculate men, to make men more like women, to feminize men. Well, there's a whole different set of wiring between being a mother and being a father.
Right.
And we have men. I've got guys that walk up and down the street. They come through our food pantry on Thursday nights, and they've got they have sired children,
Yeah.
but they don't have the opportunity. I mean, even our welfare system, the goal is to get the man out of the house. If you will not
Right.
let that man in the house, we will give you more money.
Right.
and so you have all of these guys that are walking up and down the street. They have no job, they have no place to go, they have no goals. They've got a string of children that they've sired, that they have no input into their life.
Right.
And I think, in addition to restoring the dignity of women, we need to start restoring the dignity of
Yes.
men, so that they will step up and say, "All right, I did this. This is my responsibility." But
Right.
so much in our government structure won't even allow them to take that responsibility if they were willing to do it.
Correct. Because of the fact
Yeah.
that they would be ostracized if they did. So they
Yeah.
just
Well,
sit back.
the gal. So, and this is kind of crude. So a lot of these guys are not a father. They're basically a sperm donor.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
They're just basically a sperm donor, and now I can get a bigger check at the end of the month because I have an additional baby, and
Right.
you need to leave because if they catch you here, I'll lose my money.
Right.
And that's a sad, sad wheel that we have gotten into in this nation, and it's part of the destruction of the family.
Right.
You know, I
And
was
it,
just talking with I was just talking with my class on Sunday night, and Satan, first thing he did was go after the family.
yes.
First thing he did was go after the family. Well, I'm so happy that Branches is about more than just preventing abortions,
Yeah. We're
because that doesn't solve the problem, does it?
no, it doesn't.
No.
Because the whole thing people don't understand. A pregnancy center is for a crisis. It's to help the woman get out of a crisis,
Right,
not to
right,
keep
right.
them in the crisis. And so,
Well, that's a unique approach. Let's get them out of the crisis. I mean, who would have thunk of that?
so we
That's
have,
right.
so we do everything that we can, you know. And then I think of like what you were talking about, how uh, we have to go through the pain. You know, a lot of people nowadays want people to know, can relate to. They need, this world is so hungry and so desperate for people to relate with them in their
Yeah,
pain. And so
yeah,
our a lot of our clients that come in, they all know that I've been on the streets and I've been a drug addict and stuff. So they know that I am real, and so they come, they call, they some of them just sit in our center and just can they
yeah,
go, can I just sit here? And I go, sure, because I remember when I did that. But it
yeah,
comes to my mind, and before I became the director, I went to a women's retreat, and the scripture that stuck out to me the most was Genesis 50:20, where it says, "What was meant for evil, God turned for good." And the last part, because everybody wants to quote that part, but they always forget the last part, which says to save many lives. So
yeah.
I
To
went through what I
save
went
many
through
lives.
so that God can use me to be able to save other lives. Because ultimately, and what I'm noticing, especially which I love about branches, I have the ability to share the gospel. Like I'm the woman at the well. I just want everybody to know Jesus.
Right,
That is
right,
my
right, right.
part. And
Yeah,
so to be able to show people that, you know, I understand what you're going through, and yet God will set you free, and you can be redeemed. And just to be able to share the gospel with people here and be able to let people know that there's a better life is like the most, I think, the most rewarding thing ever, on top of having a new life come into the world. I mean, we we're we're only 2 months into the year, and we already are celebrating our second baby of the year, which is so amazing, and
yeah,
it's so exciting.
yeah, yeah. So Branches, if I'm a woman or a family, a man and a woman, and I go into Branches and I need help, uh, uh, one thing is for sure, I'm going to hear about Jesus.
Oh yeah,
Okay, so that's kind of policy now, isn't it? We're going to tell you about Jesus.
oh yeah.
Uh, what other kind of services? We've got just a few minutes left, and I appreciate our folks staying with us. We've got a lot of folks in here, but and I know the audio's not been good, and I'm going to get to the root of this thing sooner or later. But I'm just saying today that it's the devil trying to keep your message from going out, but it's gone out, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We come into Branches, and we think we're pregnant. What do you do from that point?
So if you well, there's a lot of things. So one, if a woman believes that she's pregnant, we do a pregnancy test here. Because we're a non-medical site, we actually have built relationships with our local hospital, which is under a new director and CEO,
Uh-huh.
which is amazing. So we work with them. They help. They put our clients in priority to get them in to do ultrasounds. We provide clothing if they need baby food. We also have parenting classes. We have group parenting classes. Some people don't like to do one-on-one. We have human
Uh-huh.
trafficking support groups. We have domestic violence support groups. We have fatherhood program where we have men that will sit down with the father and work with them. We also have programs where if a woman needs to get into a program, like how I needed to get into a program, we refer
Right,
them
right.
to House of Hope, New Hampshire, and if it's a man who needs to get into a program, we help them get into Teen Challenge and we work with them
Big challenge, yeah.
to get into those programs so that they can get their lives together. And then also too, I myself have put my is actually I sit on the housing coalition to see what is going on with
Uh-huh.
the housing, so that if our clients need housing, how do we help them to get housing? If there need to be jobs, we work with different organizations in the community to get them a job, and if they're needing a bank account, we work with certain banks to help them get a bank account. So we really are one stop shop, to help
One-stop shopping.
and kind
Oh,
of
Gene, you really are pro-choice.
right.
You really are. You give so many opportunities for people to, and I know when you walk in the center, you see that those words on the wall, "We do life together."
It's funny. One of our clients, she said to me, she goes, "Why do you say that? Why? I don't understand that." And I go, well, "What do you mean? Jesus said that He'll never leave you nor forsake you." I said, "That's
Yeah, yeah.
what that means."
I'll never
And
leave
she's
you nor forsake you.
and she's just and so I tell the staff, that's a that statement is to start a conversation with Jesus.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right. Well, listen, we're all over the map today, but I wanted to, and just for those who are streaming in or stream in later, we're going to do this again at some point down the road. We're going to do this again. I'm going to get. I don't know. I've had uh, something. I do interviews with some people, and the audio is fine. I do interviews with other, and we fight through this battle. And I'm not sure what it is, but it's very frustrating for those who are trying to listen and I was over to your office earlier, and everything was working perfectly, and then we got on, and it goes again. But I think you have made us aware of what goes on at Branches, and I think you've caused us to be excited. I want to say to all of our folks that are tuning in now or will stream in later, pray for Branches. Branches is at a very, very unique and challenging point in history right now.
Yes,
And Gene, I do believe, and I know I speak for a lot of us who work with Branches, we do believe that God's put you here at this time. And
yes,
we do believe that God was ushering Branches into a wider role in the pro-life movement, and He brought you along prepared and ready to go. And I know you said earlier on you got some rough edges, and we've all got them. We've all got it. But what you're coming out of, you can lead others out of.
amen.
And I think that's so important. I say to people all the time, God's purpose was for Joseph to save his family, but he had to go to Egypt. He had to be a slave in Potiphar's house. He had to be in prison. He had to go through this stuff so that when the time came and the crisis arose, he was there. One of my favorite phrases: God's man, God's time, God's place. Or God's man, God's place, God's time. That's you. That's you right now. God brought you to Brattleboro, to Branches right now at this time, because this is the time when I think He wants to move. I believe God wants to move in so many fronts. But
Yes,
if we're not supporting the family, if we're not supporting babies, if we're not allowing the next generation to even be born,
right.
we are the land of the free, and yet we have literally murdered generations
Yes,
of citizens,
yes,
of scientists, of doctors, of helpers, of moms, of dads, of people who could cure diseases and all of these things. We've murdered them because mom didn't want to have a baby,
Yes.
or because the dad didn't want mom to have a baby, or somebody said this is your only choice,
Right.
and we've literally, as a nation, and how we would ever escape God's judgment for that, I have no idea.
Mm.
But in the midst even of God's judgment, there is a remnant of his servants who are
Yes.
rescuing, who are on the job, who are doing the work, who are reaching out, who are working in the midst of the struggle and the opposition. And I would encourage you. I don't see you as a wilting flower. I don't. I think opposition kind of ignites something in you, and it does. I recognize that life trait because I suffer it through it too. When something rises up to oppose me, it ignites something in me, and those are the ones that God is bringing forth right now. Right
Yes.
now in this generation, there are preachers who are gaining new fire and
Yes.
new courage to speak the word of God, to stand on the principles of the scriptures, and not
Right.
go woke and preach to the crowd and preach to the offering or whatever. But I believe prophets of God. I have a studio right on the highway. You can hear the trucks going by, but not preaching to the crowd, but delivering the word of God. And then
Yes.
in those other ministries, God is raising up people such as yourself,
Yes.
and so you need to be encouraged.
Amen.
So to our folks who are in the stream today, I see Kevin Putnam coming in here late. I'm sorry you're late, Kevin, but you can catch it on the rebound, and we're going to be doing this again with Gene because we're going to have more stuff to report.
Yes.
I
Like a
think, Gene,
victory of winning the
here's what
battle.
we ought to do. We ought to do a once a month report. Where are we right now? What's going on right now? What kind of a mess have we gotten ourselves into right now? What kind of victories is God doing? And
Yes.
and you can maybe bring in some of the pictures of those babies.
Yes.
I've seen them. They're great.
Yes.
They're great. And I think about it. I think about my own life when I was born in 1948. My mom was not married. And in 1948, boy, that was not well accepted in
Right.
those days. And I remember growing up with a lot of stigma, and my mom had nobody. She had nobody. And as you know now, I've got 5 kids and 15 grandchildren, and our last one was born just a couple of months
Yes.
ago, and he is beautiful. And
Yes.
I can't even imagine
Mm.
somebody wanting to do harm to
Mm.
this not only an innocent child but a child with so much potential,
Yes.
so much potential. And I want to, on behalf of our town, thank you for the work that you're doing. We are with you. We will stand with you in the fight. Okay.
Amen.
This is Jean Marie Davis. She has joined us. She is from the executive director of Branches Pregnancy Resource Center in Brattleboro. She is a sex trafficking survivor. She's a drug addict survivor. She's a mom who decided to keep her baby. His name is Jonah. And how
Yes.
old is he now?
He's 9 going on 50.
He, he's 9 going on 25. He is. And so thank you, and we are going to do this again. I'm going to get these technical things straightened out.
Yes.
If I have to bring you here and sit you in a chair beside of me, we're gonna do it. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Thank you, Jean Marie.
Thank you,
God
Pastor.
bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you for coming on. All right. Bye bye. So that's it. That's my interview with Jean Marie, and I do apologize for the audio issues. I'm not sure what's going on. I've got to do some investigation. I'm going to do some research this afternoon to see if there's something in my equipment or in the internet or whatever. But I'll do an interview with one party, and it's just perfect. And then I do another with somebody else, and it's a struggle. But I hope you were blessed. I hope you will pray for Branches. I hope you will pray for Jean. I hope you will pray for all of those babies out there that are at great risk for the first time in their life. They are in the place that at one time was the safest place on the planet, and now it's a place filled with danger. And so we want to pray. I'm going to pray just a moment, and then we're going to close. Father, I want to thank you for Jean Marie. I want to thank you for Branches Pregnancy Resource Center. I want to thank you for all of those who support the center, those who financially give, those who pray, those who volunteer, all of the staff there. Father, we pray for a special anointing. And Father, we do pray about this court, about this suit that is coming up. Pray for a judge who will allow for the things to even be filed, so that we can go into that discovery level and that real evidence can be presented. Real people can sit before a judge and declare how they have benefited, how God has blessed them because of centers like Branches and so many others. This is Michael Gantt. This has been Live Mike. I'll see you later.